Ladies and gentlemen, we're about to begin the service of Theodore Ted Gluck. It was a private burial on Friday, and that's when the Kriya was cut. However, we are humbled and honored to have the Honor Guard from the United States Air Force for military honors. So at this time, we're going to begin the military portion of the service, then followed by the memorial service officiated by Rabbi David Minkus.
You may be seated.
On behalf of the family, we want to thank the United States Air Force Honor Guard. This time we're going to begin the memorial service. Once again, it will be officiated by Rabbi David Minkus, Congregation Road Fate Tzedek.
We'll begin with chanting Psalm 121.
I turn my eyes to the mountains. From where will my help come? My help comes from Adonai, maker of heaven and earth. Adonai will not let your foot give way. Your guardian will not slumber. The guardian of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. Adonai is your protection, a guardian at your right hand. By day the sun will not strike you, nor the moon by night. Adonai will guard you from all harm and guard your life. Adonai guards your going and coming, now and forever.
Ted, I have to say, Ted thought highly of me. That's why I'm here. As someone who was a rabbi, he had other rabbis in his life, but he asked me to be the rabbi here. But I have to say that I'm incredibly grateful to his children for doing all the singing parts. So thank you. We're going to begin with some words from Ted's youngest daughter, Sarah.
Last month, I went to visit my dad in the loft. He told me that he saw a piece of himself in each of his children, and I'm going to share the content of that conversation as a way to remember Dad. Dad had presence. His energy flowed through every part of him, including his legendary eyebrows. His voice carried, whether talking or singing. When he spoke, you could not help but listen. He had stage presence that cannot be taught, whether speaking to a crowd of 1 or 1,000, or anything in between. My sister Rachel carries this legacy. My dad knew his shit. He was so smart and so well educated. He held himself to a high standard and was an amazing teacher. The Hebrew term for his expectation of excellence is midakdek. My brother Joe carries this legacy. My dad was real. He called it being a rebel. Dad was never constrained by what he should do. He lived life through controlling his own destiny and not following expected paths. My sister Mimi is true to herself and carries his legacy. Dad loved looking at people and their actions and seeing through to their soul. When I was much younger, I went out to lunch with him, and I avoided my water glass, which was next to my plate when eating. People don't understand this. So my plate was here, and the water glass was here, and I was like eating like this. He told me that I needed to stop adapting to the world around me and instead make the world adapt to me. He saw this one act as a pattern of behavior that would get in my way of happiness. He was clear and direct. This was how he approached every relationship. He saw through bullshit and demanded the truth. I would like to believe that I carry this legacy. My dad told me that I do. I am so grateful for the time I was able to spend with my dad, especially the last few months when every visit was a moment to treasure. Dad was remarkable. He loved his children. He loved his wife. He loved his work. He loved his friends. And he left a piece of himself in all of us. Le Dor Vador, we will continue your legacy.
And I invite one of Ted's granddaughters, Kate Buckner, to share some words.
From what I know, the legend of a person is measured in the impact that they leave on those they leave behind. When I think of the men who have impacted my life, Theodore Gluck, or Grandpa as I called him, is nothing short of legendary. I don't expect anyone in here to disagree with me, but let me explain a little further. When I was 9, I had one of my first real memories with him, where I questioned something he said during a phone conversation he was having. I will spare you all the details, but of course, as a grandfather would, his initial response to me was, I wouldn't understand. But later, that night, in true Grandpa Ted fashion, before I went to bed, he sat me down and told me that I had been correct, and my intuition was wise beyond my years, and that I should never lose my courage to speak what I believe is right and to trust my gut. That has stuck with me still to this day. Skip ahead 16 years, and I was struggling the first time in my career. I was living in Chicago and thought I was supposed to have my dream job, but I was miserable. And on top of that, a few months later, I was fired. I was kind of lost, and when he asked me to lunch with Grandpa that afternoon, he told me that nothing counted until I was over 40. He said, I may feel like I had fallen, but the important thing was that I didn't stay there, and that he knew there was nothing I wasn't going to succeed in. I just needed to believe in myself. And that was truly a point in my adult life where everything started to change. Just after my 30th birthday, I was feeling pretty incredible. I was reaching fitness and health goals that I had been striving for most of my life. I had a career I couldn't have been more proud of. Many of you may not know, but losing that job in Chicago, I went on to travel the world with bands when they tour for my career. And it's something that I love, but has also led me to hindrance in other aspects of my life, like relationships and work-life balance. Again, I reached out to the man who has always steered me in the right direction. His guidance this time was that the expectations I was referring to are the outside world's problem, and it's all bullshit. I was marching to the beat of my own drum and paving a way that maybe others didn't understand, but there was still time for me to accomplish anything and everything that I put my mind to. Now there are countless. Sorry, this is the one part I can't get through. No, there are countless other things I could mention. Lunches that we shared where he would give me little nuggets of help. In fact, I deleted 3 of them when finishing this speech. But the most important one was when I visited him 2 weeks ago. We had one last conversation where I asked him if there were any more words of wisdom that he had for me. He looked up and grabbed his head, as I know you guys would recognize as his move. And then started with shaking his head. The last words my grandfather really ever said to me were, "No, you are perfect just the way you are." And if that isn't legendary, I don't know what is.
Ted heard many voices and followed many paths. He lived a full life. He was not simply alive for 93 years, but he filled those 93 years with experiences on how to completely be alive. Ted lived a life committed to finding the voice that would speak to him and the path that would enable him to find the meaning, purpose, and connection to something greater than what he had in the moment, while helping those around him do the same. Ted was a seeker, a maverick, a rabbi, a lover, a healer, a student, a son, a friend, a parent, and a teacher. The first voice Ted heard was that of his parents. And one can imagine many other voices crowding in their way into his Bronx home. But his parents were his first. But as some of you know, there was no Ted, only Tibor. Tibor went to school not understanding the voices and accents of those around him because they were not his native Hungarian. But he quickly became comfortable with the Yiddish of the other newly arrived immigrants, like his parents. And then, as life went on, he became fluent in many languages. He got the name Ted, in a way, from learning his first universal lesson. His teacher could not pronounce his name and gave him the name Ted, which he took to since he knew that other kids in his class were making fun of him because of his name. But he realized that the kids would make fun of your name no matter what, if it was American sounding or un-American like Tibor. They would make fun of you if your name was Bill or Bob, Ted or Tibor. And I think from that moment, he made a decision on how to live, even if it was subconscious, one that a 5 or 6-year-old would not be able to articulate. Regardless of language, he was going to live his life on his terms. Whoever came with him would be impacted and their life would be enriched, and anyone who didn't, well, that was not going to be his concern. Ted excelled in school, figuring out languages, English, Arabic, Aramaic, and the language of academia. He went to CCNY, which he referred to as Poor Jewish Boys School. I'd always heard of it as the Jewish Harvard. He loved it there. And he found it more exciting and engaging than anywhere else he'd ever been or would go. And why did he like it more there than anywhere else? Because the students fought with the teachers. At Yale, where he got his PhD in Near Eastern languages, the students just listened. There was no talking back. And perhaps, the old quotas for Jews at those elite schools maybe were not about anti-Semitism, but perhaps, or anti-Semitism per se, perhaps they were because those schools had an inkling of the pain in the behind it could be to have Jews as students. Certainly something Ted enjoyed as a student, but perhaps was the reason he sought out the pristine, genteel environment of Yale after having gone into the rabbinate. And as perhaps some of you were told, when Tibor was young, his father said to him, "Tibor, you could be anything you would like, a rabbi, a doctor, or a lawyer." That was certainly an era, and maybe if he was born at a different time, his developing baritone voice could have been harnessed, and his passion for music, for performance, and love of singing could have been channeled into a different career. Or perhaps Ted would tell you you have to follow many paths before you can find the right one. Actually, if Ted was here, I think he would say, "No, Rabbi. The way to state that would be this way. You need to find the right parts of the path, no matter what path you find yourself on. Get from it what you can, because where you start is not always your choice, but where you end up is yours. Where that path takes you is your choice to make." The rabbinate was available to him. He was not quite a believer, but he was a great student. And our great book, the Talmud, is nothing if not a bunch of guys sitting around fighting about which way to go, how to make meaning, which is the best way to shape that meaning into a life. He may not have felt called to this lifestyle, but like him, those rabbis were mavericks. He took to one of his teachers at the seminary, Mordechai Kaplan, and Kaplan's nascent movement provided theological space for him to exist. And ultimately, the space that it allowed for him to carve for himself helped Jews find their way to being the kind of Jews that they needed to be, wherever that took them. He enjoyed certain aspects of the rabbinate, mostly the people. It brought him to many places, to meet many people. It brought him to the army, to Massachusetts, Connecticut, and ultimately here to Chicago. The rabbinate was what was available to him. It was what made, but because it was available to him, because you had to fill out paperwork to be a doctor or a lawyer, and to be a rabbi, well, you didn't. He did not love giving sermons and some of the other expected duties that came along with being a rabbi, but he loved seeing members of his community and being a part of their life. And they, in turn, loved it too. And he began to realize that what he was doing and the congregants that were seeking him out as a source of strength and advice and comfort was leading him to a different path. He had got his PhD while in the rabbinate, but he realized that the career change was not academia, but therapy. It was therapy where he found his calling. The voice he had been seeking found its path. The meaning and the purpose that had been elusive had now found its proper home, and the world was better for it. His clients, he never saw or referred to the people that came to him as patients, were met by someone who was unwilling to do anything but bring healing to their lives. He refused to be a passive listener or adhere to traditional definitions of a therapist because he wanted those in his care to grow. And no one would grow if they are stagnant and not willing to listen, so he was not willing to sit by quietly. Ted knew that people sought him out for a reason, that people were brought into his orbit for a purpose, for his voice, and he was going to be an inquisitive interventionist, always challenging his clients' preconceptions. He had a profound ability to understand dynamics. He got people and found the words and the proper path using imaginative means, creative assignments to help people change. Ted was a therapist, a rabbi, a chaplain, a student, and a father. He taught his children many things and offered them wisdom on how to live, both through his intentional lessons, but also those learned through osmosis. He would be the first to share. Sometimes those lessons are beautiful and full of care, and some of them are hard and earned through difficulty. That comes with growth, and that growth can hurt. But it came from love, the love that he felt to his core for his children. Ted had many lives and many stops on his journey, but the one that might have been his most joyous and full was when he found his love, Marguerite. Marguerite, you said you were the luckiest person in the world to have him, but I can assure you, I know this because he told me, he felt the same way about you. His love for you was so true, so earnest, so full of zest for the life that you shared together. He might have been your Ken doll, but he loved that. He looked good, and I'm sure he enjoyed that. He enjoyed that you gave him and continued to give him new dimensions and showed him new paths to take. You got to do something, have someone unique, and what you gave each other was a blessing, something to share with, to share the fullness of experiences with. It took Ted a life to find you, but I know he would have go through that life again if it meant finding you. A few summers ago, I got the pleasure of sitting with Ted, of totally being with him. Then, as now, there's a certain warmth that fills me when I say Ted. I would enjoy calling him that. I enjoyed it in the way that a rabbi enjoys calling another rabbi by their first name. Maybe doctors feel that little pleasure too. And I think he felt that same kinship towards me. He told me that he wanted me to do his eulogy. But first, he needed to tell me of his life. Modesty aside, since he had been in the business and having been emotionally wise and the talented intellect that he was, I think he knew that a good rabbi, which I hope that I am, could find the right and authentic words to share, even without having known someone well. But he turned this into an opportunity for me to have Tuesdays with Tibor. I don't think he was wary of my technical skills, but wanted someone to sit with at his beloved breakfast house, where he was truly like Norm from Cheers. Everyone was glad that he had come down his stairs, and whether he was having coffee or huevos rancheros, they were happy that he was with them. I think he liked sharing his life story with me because he had just begun to work it out. But a therapist or a partner was not the appropriate audience for this. And I am not sure a child wants to hear how you as a parent have assembled the pieces of your life. He was clear-eyed about his life, and he was at peace, warts and all. And while he was nothing but effusive with me, I have total gratitude to him and feel blessed for those beautiful Sunday mornings that we shared together. And I walked away knowing that the world was grateful too. The world was bettered, not by who Ted was not, but by who he was. He brought healing to the world, eased pain, and gave love. And here there's a room full of people who are here because of that and continue to make the world better and share their own love. Each of his children walks through life with love, with music, giving care, and living with gusto. As I said the other day, Ted reminds me of Abraham. Our patriarch, Abraham, heard a voice, and he followed it. Sometimes that voice led to great things, profound discoveries and impact on the world at the time and ever since. Sometimes that voice needed to be challenged, harnessed in a different way than what was heard literally. And sometimes Ted simply heard something different than everyone else. And that is what made Ted, Ted. Ted was someone who changed the world, impacted anyone who came into his world, anyone who came in contact with him was made better, shaped to be something different. Abraham is long gone. He might only have been in an idea, an exemplar, showing us a path of how to be a maverick, of having the bravery to follow the idea of living a life of impact. The life of impact that so many of us ignore, too afraid of charting a new path, and we allow ourselves to fall prey to the voice of fear. Tibor was real, and may his voice reverberate and his impact continue to guide our way. We'll now hear the memorial prayer.
Please rise. El mare rachamim shochen b'meromim המצא מנוחה נכונה תחת כנפי השכינה במעלות קדושים וטהורים כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים את נשמת הרב חנוך בן אברהם וברכה טובה שהלך לעולמו בגן עדן תהא מנוחתו אנא בעל הרחמים הסתירהו בסתר כנפיך לעולמים וצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתו. אדוני הוא נחלתו, וינוח בשלום על משכבו, ונאמר Amen. O God, full of compassion, Thou who dwellest on high, grant perfect rest beneath the sheltering wings of Thy presence among the holy and pure who shine as the brightness of the firmament unto the soul of Theodore Ted Gluck, who has gone unto eternity. Lord of mercy, bring him under the cover of Thy wings, and let his soul be bound up in the bond of eternal life. Be God's possession, and may his repose be peace. Amen. And now my siblings and I will join together as we chant Psalm 23, and then we'll read it together in English.
Can I say something?
Yes, yes.
So I'm going ad lib a little bit here. So in the last couple of weeks, my dad was unwell, as you know, and he really didn't respond to very much. But the one thing that he responded to was music, because it wasn't a part of his conscious, it was a part of his soul. And when we spent time with him, we sang to him.
Almost every day.
Almost every day. And Psalm 23 is what we sang to him as he literally took his last breaths.
Mismo
The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever.
We'll conclude with the mourner's cottage, which is on the back of your pamphlets. Yitgadal, Yitgadash, Shemei Rabbah, Ba'alma Divra Churute, V'amich Malchute, V'chayechon Uv'mechon, V'chay Dechol Beit Yisrael, Ba'gola Uzman Kari V'imru, Amen. Ehei Shmei Rabbah L'olam L'olam Omer Almayim. Yiparach v'yishtabach v'yitpar v'yitvonan v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitalev v'yitalal shmei d'kudsha b'richu le'ela mikol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata d'amiram b'alma b'imru. Amen. Yehi Shlama Rabba Min Shemaya, V'chaim Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael V'imru Amen. Oseh Shalom B'mramav, Hu Ya'aseh Shalom, Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael V'imru Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, the services here are concluded. The family will be in the North Chapel till 4 p.m. Then everyone is invited to the Hale Lofts. That information is on the service folder. That's today from 5 to 8 p.m. And Marguerite will also receive visitors Wednesday from 1 to 8 p.m. Memorial contributions to the Adler University would be appreciated. And for the many, many people that are joining us online, all that information is on the funeral home's website. Also in the lobby, please take a moment to please leave a kind note or share a memory for the family of Ted Gluck, and the books are in the lobby. At this time, I invite everyone to rise and stand in place as we escort the family to the North Chapel. Just give them a few moments to get situated, and then please visit them if you're not going to the Hale Lofts.